Yes, believe it or not, you read the title properly. Parts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina have a chance to see their first snowstorm of the year before parts of the Northeast does, such as Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Now, this is set to take place anywhere from Saturday to Sunday night, and it could drop 1 to 2, 3 to 4 inches of snow, depending where you are, in higher amounts and higher elevations. If we want to take a look at the GFS here for Saturday into Sunday, we can see a low pressure system forms as a cutoff low forms. I'll show you on a 500 millibar map in a second. But notice how on the western side it forms snow. This is rain changing to snow due to the low pressure bringing down colder air from its own system that it created, own cold air that it created from it developing, and then it changes the rain over to snow on the western side. Now, where exactly this sets up is to be determined. We are 90 hours away from this potential threat, but wherever that sets up, that area could get a hefty amount of heavy wet snow. According to the GFS here, I'll just circle it so we can compare it to other models. The heaviest of snow sets up over here on the border of, believe it or not, central Georgia and western South Carolina. If I said this to you in November, that this would be happening in February, and where it would be snowing in Georgia but raining along the coast in the Northeast, you would think I was crazy. But since we have such, actually, it's not even minimal cold air. There's literally no cold air around. From by the time the system goes up the coast, you can see the 540 line, the 32-degree line, is all the way. Not, it's not even in New York. It's literally on the border of New York and Canada, but it is in Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and Maine. You can't work with this if you want snow in the Northeast. And at least on this run, it doesn't even bring precip up to Long Island and Central Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, etc. If we go back one run or two, you can see it does bring precip. I'll go back a tick. You can see it does bring precip into that area, but on this run, it does not. If we want to compare this snow swath to the Canadian, you can see that it's a little bit warmer with the system. It's weaker, but it does give snow in the mountains. I'll change the color. I will put orange as the Canadian. It gives snow in this area at the higher elevations. And then if you want to continue it on, okay, so it gives in this area right here, which is the mountainous terrain of the Northeast. This area snow, that's with the Canadian. And if you want to switch to the icon, it's pretty much aligned with the same thing with the Canadian. I'll just mark it up one more time just so we can compare all of them. The icon is like this, and I think it gets into that area. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Yeah, it gets into that area. So this is what all the models do show at the moment. If you want to switch back to GFS just to have it on the screen, it actually does get snow into more of South Carolina, so I'll extend that real quick. It gets it into this area as well. Okay, so this is what we have. Black is the GFS, orange is the Canadian, and the pink is the icon. The NAM is not far enough out, and we'll take a look at the European in just a moment. But just looking at these three models, it is definitely in favoring the more interior sections of the southeast. Now, I'm not going to rule out the snow possibility in the southeast with this cutoff low becoming a nor'easter, but that's what just the models are showing at this moment. And the 500 millibar, notice how it does form a cutoff off the coast and becomes a low pressure system over South Carolina and then quickly goes out to the east northeast. Since there is nothing, no short waves up in north going to be lining with this, it's not going to be able to move more into the Gulf of Maine, giving them a snowstorm. There's nothing going to be able to pull this storm, lift this storm up north. So it's just going to take a track from South Carolina, go east northeast out to sea, and then probably not affect anybody else after this. But before it does go out to sea, it could possibly give the southeast a little bit of a snowstorm. I will give the GFS credit though. The other day, I wasn't thinking it would be anything close to this because if you look at the Canadian, even 2 runs ago, it had a very flat low pressure at 500 millibars. If we just go back to next past 2 runs, we can see it's been a drastic change. If we take a look at the European, I'm sorry about that. The European on a 12Z, we can see that it also has it as well. It might be a little bit stronger than the GFS. I think the European, I hate how it does that 18Z. The European is a little bit stronger and a little bit more north, so it does bring the precip a little bit more north. So if we want to take a quick look at the European, this is what it shows. It's pretty much like the Canadian in icon, but it does give a little bit of snow into northern Georgia, western most parts of North and South Carolina, and then into the mountains of West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee. It does give snow for that part of regions, but notice how in the Northeast, unless you are almost north of Boston, there is no cold air once again. So we are going to have very minimal cold air, and that's the best scenario, minimal cold air. If you want to be reasonable with this, if you're anywhere really not in this area right here, you are probably not going to see snow. Believe it or not, even though the Northeast, some parts of the Northeast haven't seen snow, and Mid-Atlantic, such as Philadelphia, New York, Washington. Washington could see snow out of this. It depends on the track and how much cold air the system produces. But Philly, New York City, you get the idea. We are going to have a historic low amount of snowfall this year, it looks like. And if we want to take a look at the snowfall totals according to GFS, believe it or not, it wants to give 8 inches, 8, not centimeters, 8 inches of heavy wet snow on the border of South Carolina and Georgia. That purple is 6+ inches of snow, and then in the mountainous terrain, you would get more snow. This is a 12Z on the right, if you want to compare it. It actually gave Central South Carolina 10 inches of snow, which is crazy to me that it even is doing this. I still think the GFS is a little bit wrong where the snow is going to be. I find it hard to believe how coastal parts of Georgia, that on Atlantic coastal parts, is going to see snow out of this. If the GFS is right, I'll give credits where it's due, but I definitely think it's going to be a more interior, higher elevation event than what the GFS is showing. This I could definitely see. On the 12Z, you get rid of this stuff over here. Anything south of that, you get rid of. Or you could have it maybe 1 to 2 inches, but not 10 to 12 inches in central South Carolina. That is very, very hard to believe. And we want to take a look at the European on its snow totals and go to the 12Z, you can see that it pretty much agrees with my statement. It actually does give a little bit of snow northwest of New York City. That is debatable because, well, it's going to be, I think that's going to be during the daytime when it snows. No, it'll be during the morning. Okay, so I guess there is a small, very small possibility of that happening. Light snow across northwest parts of New York City. I can't rule that out, but it's highly unlikely at the moment. If you are higher elevations of Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, that's your best chance of seeing snow. 100%. No doubt in my mind. If we want to take a look at the Canadian too while we're at it, it is pretty close to the European, but not quite as expansive with the snow totals. And you can see you have that little snow pocket in Tennessee, which if you live there, I'm sorry that you're even looking at that. If I was a snow lover living in that spot, that would crush my soul. That would hurt a lot. But if you want to take a look at the icon too, it's pretty much the same thing as well. If you want to take a look at WPC's chances of seeing 2 inches of more of snow, if you're light green, that extends from almost into the northern parts of Georgia, not as quite, but in western parts of North Carolina, eastern parts of Tennessee, I'll zoom in a little bit more, western parts of Virginia, and eastern parts of West Virginia, that's your 10 to 30% chance in the light green, and in the darker greens of North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, where the high elevations are, you get a 30 to 50% chance of seeing 2 inches or more. And then on Monday, that expands southward into higher elevations of South Carolina, North Carolina, and also Virginia. Richmond could see snow out of this. I don't know why there's that little speck right by Philly, right on Philly actually. I don't know why they did that. I'm not gonna judge. And there's a little bit of speck. Okay, so I can understand why they did this up here, but I don't know why Philly, out of all places, they gave a little speck. I don't know what they're thinking, but oh well. That's WPC's chance of seeing at least 2 inches on the ground. And there is a decent chance North and South Carolina and Virginia get 2 inches out of this storm. Now you'd be maybe asking, what do you think I'm thinking out of this storm? As of right now, as of February 8th, 7 p.m., this is where the best chance of seeing snow is. If you're in this light blue, that's your best chance of seeing snow on the ground accumulating. Just southwest of Washington, D.C., into Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, Lynchburg, Roanoke, Blacksburg, Kingsport, and Asheville and Hickory in North Carolina, and just northwest of Greenville in South Carolina, and the higher elevations of northeast Georgia. I think you could see snow out of this, and the low pressure system needs to cut off a little bit more and strengthen a little more to drag down more cold air aloft. But as of now, we also have 4 or 5 days left to track this storm. This is your best chance of seeing snow as of now. Things will change. It could go from lower totals or higher totals. We may have to expand this a little bit more north if you want to take a look at that, what the European ensembles are showing, which I was looking at it before, and they were hinting at a little bit more of, like I said, northwest of New York City. You see how your mean right here, you have an inch plus in this area, and then you have this little stripe here that stretches all the way into that area of the country. Let me just go to 24 hours snowfall. This is 10 to 1. I really don't trust 10 to 1, but we don't have the Kuchira 10 to Kuchira 24 hours. So we're just gonna have to look at the 10 to 1 ratio for now. But you get the idea. Anywhere northwest in New York City, by Albany and Hartford and Worcester. I definitely butchered that name, but anywhere in that region, you could, according to the European ensembles on the 12Z, the 18Z is just coming out now, but according to that, there's a chance of seeing snow out of this. But for now, I'm going to leave that out because that's only models showing a possibility of snow. I hope you all enjoyed this video today. I will keep you updated tomorrow, and I hope you all have a great